Hey, deep divers. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Today we're going to be looking at one of Jesus's most famous teaching techniques.
Parables.
Yeah, parables are those stories he told to help people understand God's kingdom.
Right. It's like he took everyday things that people could relate to, and he used those things to explain deep spiritual truths.
So it's like he's speaking in code.
Exactly. A code that unlocks God's mysteries.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's crack this code. Where do we start?
Well, one of the most well-known parables is the parable of the sower. It's found in Mark chapter 4.
Okay, so set the scene for us. Where's Jesus? What's going on?
Picture this. Jesus is by the seaside, and there's a massive crowd gathered to hear him teach.
Like a rock concert, but with spiritual teachings instead of music.
Pretty much. There were so many people that Jesus actually had to get into a boat just to be seen and heard.
Wow. That's a lot of people eager to hear what he had to say.
They sure were. So from this boat, Jesus begins to tell the story of a farmer who's out sowing seeds.
I'm already picturing this farmer scattering seeds across a field. What happens next?
Well, as the farmer is sowing, some of the seeds land on a path.
A path. Like a hard-packed dirt road.
Yeah, and since the ground is so hard, those seeds can't really penetrate the soil.
So what happens to them?
Well, they just sit there on the surface, and the birds come along and gobble them right up.
Oh no, poor seeds. That's like when I drop my popcorn on the floor at the movie theater.
Exactly. It's a lost opportunity.
Okay, so some seeds get eaten by birds. What about the rest of them?
Well, some of the seeds land on rocky ground.
Rocky ground. That doesn't sound very good for growing things.
You're right. It's not ideal. Because there's not much soil for the roots to take hold, these seeds sprout up quickly.
Oh, that sounds promising. At least they're growing.
They are, but because the roots aren't deep, they quickly wither away under the hot sun.
Oh, that's so sad. It's like they get a good start, but then they just can't keep going.
It is sad. It highlights the importance of having a strong foundation.
Okay, so we've got seeds eaten by birds. Seeds that wither away on rocky ground. Are there any seeds left?
There are. Some of the seeds fall among thorns.
Thorns. Ouch. That sounds painful.
It is. The thorns represent all those things that can choke out our faith and prevent us from growing.
Like distractions and worries?
Exactly. Things that steal our focus and energy and prevent us from truly flourishing.
So those seeds get choked out by the thorns. That's 3 strikes against the farmer's efforts so far. Are there any seeds that actually make it?
Ah, but here's the good news. Some of the seeds land on good soil.
Finally, some hope for the seeds.
And on this good soil, the seeds take root, they grow strong, and they produce a bountiful harvest.
Yes, a happy ending for some of the seeds. But I have a feeling this is more than just a story about a farmer and his seeds.
You're absolutely right. Remember, we're talking about parables,
Yeah.
stories with deeper meanings.
So what's the hidden code here? What do the seeds, the birds, the different types of soil represent?
Well, the seeds represent God's message. And the different types of ground represent the different ways that people respond to that message.
Okay, I'm starting to see the puzzle pieces fitting together. So the seeds that get eaten by the birds, those are like people who hear God's word, but they don't really pay attention.
Exactly. It goes in one ear and out the other. They never give it a chance to take root.
And the seeds that land on rocky ground, those are the people who get excited about God at first, but then they give up easily.
Right. Their faith is shallow and it can't withstand the challenges of life.
And the seeds that get choked by the thorns, those are the people who get distracted by all the worries and cares of the world.
Precisely. They let those things crowd out God's message, and they never experience the fullness of his blessings.
And then there are the seeds that land on good soil. These are the people who hear God's word, they understand it, and they let it change their lives.
They're the ones who put their faith into action. They produce good fruit in their lives. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control.
Wow, so this parable is all about how we receive and respond to God's message.
It is, and it's a challenge to us to examine our own hearts. What kind of soil are we?
That's a good question to ask ourselves. Yeah. Are we letting God's word take root in our lives, or are we letting it get snatched away, choked out, or withered away?
It's a choice we make every day, and the results are eternal.
So this is deep stuff, but I'm loving it. This parable really makes you think.
And guess what? Jesus didn't just tell one parable. He told a bunch of them.
Really? A whole series of spiritual puzzles to unlock.
Exactly. And they're all just as fascinating and insightful as the parable of the sower.
Okay, I'm ready for more. Let's keep cracking these codes. What's next?
Well, there's one about a lamp.
A lamp. What could a lamp possibly have to do with God's kingdom?
Well, this particular lamp was hidden under a basket.
Wait, what? Why would you hide a lamp under a basket? That's like the opposite of what a lamp is supposed to do.
Exactly, and that's precisely the point Jesus was making.
Okay, I'm listening. Tell me more.
Jesus was saying that when we learn something amazing about God, we shouldn't keep it to ourselves.
We should share it with others.
Right, just like a lamp is meant to shine its light for everyone to see.
So we're not supposed to be like that hidden lamp. We're supposed to let our light shine.
Exactly. But what does that look like in practice?
Good question. What are some ways we can let our light shine?
That's something we can explore further. But first, Jesus told another parable. This one about a tiny mustard seed.
A mustard seed. Those things are like minuscule.
Right. But even though a mustard seed starts out tiny, it has the potential to grow into a big, strong plant.
Wow, so it's like a little powerhouse.
Exactly. And that's what Jesus was using the mustard seed to illustrate. He was saying that even though God's kingdom might start small, it has the power to grow into something huge.
So even though things might seem insignificant at first, they can have a huge impact in the end.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that we should never underestimate the power of God's work in our lives and in the world.
These parables are really making me think. They're like little seeds of wisdom that can grow into something amazing.
They really are. And the best part is that there's always more to discover. We've only just scratched the surface of what this chapter of Mark has to offer.
Okay, you've definitely piqued my curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
What else is in store for us in this deep dive?
Well, remember that huge crowd listening to Jesus by the sea?
Yeah, the ones that made him teach from a boat.
That's right. Well, after a long day of teaching, Jesus and his disciples decide to cross the sea in a boat.
Okay, I'm picturing a beautiful, peaceful evening on the water.
Mm-hmm.
What happened next?
Well, let's just say their peaceful evening took a very unexpected turn.
Ooh, this sounds exciting. What happened?
A massive storm blew in, seemingly out of nowhere.
Ooh, a storm.
Yeah.
Like one of those crazy ones with huge waves and thunder and lightning.
Exactly. It was a full-blown tempest. The wind was howling. The waves were crashing over the boat.
So what did the disciples do? I bet they were freaking out.
They were terrified. They thought for sure the boat was going to sink and they were all going to drown.
I can't blame them. That sounds terrifying. So what did they do? Did they start bailing water or try to steer the boat?
They did what any sensible person would do in that situation. They ran to Jesus.
Of course they did. He's the miracle worker after all.
They woke him up shouting, "Help us! We're going to drown!"
Wait a minute. You're telling me that while all this chaos was happening, Jesus was asleep?
Sound asleep.
Seriously. How could he possibly sleep through a raging storm like that?
That's what the disciples thought, too. They couldn't believe he was so calm and collected in the midst of such danger.
So what did Jesus do when they woke him up? Did he panic? Did he start giving orders?
Nope. He simply stood up, looked at the storm, and said, "Peace, be still."
He talked to the storm.
Yep. And guess what?
The storm listened.
It did. The wind stopped blowing, the waves calmed down, and everything became perfectly still. It was as if the storm had never even happened.
Whoa. That's incredible. So Jesus has power over nature. He can control the wind and the waves.
Exactly. This story shows us that Jesus has authority over all of creation. He can calm even the biggest and scariest storms.
This is blowing my mind. So what's the deeper meaning here? What's the takeaway for us?
Well, think about how the disciples were feeling. They were terrified, even though they had seen Jesus perform countless miracles.
Yeah, they knew he was the Son of God. They had witnessed his power firsthand. So why were they so afraid?
I think they were so focused on the immediate danger that they forgot about the bigger picture. They let their fear overshadow their faith.
It's like when I'm afraid of the dark and I forget that my parents are right there in the next room.
Exactly. Sometimes when we face storms in our own lives, problems, fears, things that make us feel overwhelmed, we forget that Jesus is right there with us too.
He's not asleep at the wheel, so to speak.
He's wide awake and he's got everything under control.
That's a really comforting thought, especially when things are tough.
It is. And just like he calmed the storm on the sea, he can calm the storms in our hearts and minds too.
He's the ultimate storm calmer.
Absolutely. He's the anchor that holds us steady, the calm in the midst of the storm.
This is making me think about all those times in my life when I felt like I was caught in a storm.
We all face storms in life, but the good news is we don't have to face them alone. Jesus is always with us, offering his peace and his strength.
So we've talked about parables and we've talked about storms. Is there a connection between the two?
That's a great question. And the answer is a resounding yes.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
I think there's something really profound happening in this whole passage from Mark.
I'm all ears.
We see Jesus teaching with these amazing parables, revealing spiritual truths in ways that people can connect with. He's like a master storyteller, using everyday images to help people understand God's love and power.
Right. Those parables were like little windows into God's kingdom.
Exactly. And then, after teaching with these powerful stories, he demonstrates his authority over nature by calming the storm. It's like he's showing his disciples and us that his power isn't limited to just words and stories. He has power over everything.
So it's not just about calming the storms in our hearts,
Yeah.
but recognizing that he has dominion over the entire universe.
Exactly. And you know what I find even more inspiring?
What's that?
It's that Jesus doesn't keep this power to himself. He invites us to share in it.
Wait, really? What do you mean?
Throughout the Gospels, we see Jesus giving his disciples authority to heal the sick, cast out demons, and even calm storms themselves.
Wow. So we're not just called to be passive recipients of his power,
Yeah.
but active participants in his work.
Exactly. We're invited to step into that same power and bring healing, peace, and hope to the world around us.
That's a pretty tall order.
It is. But with God, all things are possible.
We're like mini storm calmers.
And that, my friend, is where things get really exciting.
Ooh, a cliffhanger.
Mm.
I can't wait to hear more. All right, deep divers, we're back and ready to wrap up this epic deep dive into Mark chapter 4.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It has. We've gone from seeds to storms, and now we're talking about becoming storm calmers ourselves.
And that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, you got my attention. Spill the beans.
It's not just about having the power, it's about knowing how to use it.
So it's not like we get a magic wand and can just zap away all our problems.
Exactly. It's not about controlling everything around us.
But what is it about?
It's about partnering with God and trusting his guidance.
So it's more like we're teaming up with God and letting him work through us.
That's a great way to put it. It's about aligning ourselves with his will and seeking his wisdom in every situation.
So it's not about trying to be superheroes, but about being humble servants.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that God is the ultimate source of power and we're simply vessels for his work.
That's a powerful image.
Yeah.
It's like we're conduits for his grace and love.
Precisely. And that requires a lot of trust and faith.
Especially when things are tough and we don't understand what's happening.
Exactly. It's easy to trust God when everything is smooth sailing. But what about when the storms hit?
That's when our faith is really tested.
It is. And that's where the story of Jesus calming the storm comes in.
Ah, yes, back to the boat.
Remember how scared the disciples were? Even though they had seen Jesus perform countless miracles, they still panicked when the storm hit.
It's like they forgot who they were with.
They did. And sometimes we do the same thing. We let our fear overshadow our faith.
We forget that Jesus is right there with us in the boat.
He's always there, ready to calm the storms in our lives.
So how do we tap into that power? How do we become storm calmers ourselves?
It starts with prayer and surrender.
Giving our worries and fears over to God,
Exactly. And trusting that he has everything under control.
even when we don't see it.
Especially when we don't see it, that's when faith comes in.
So it's about letting go of our need to control everything.
And embracing the peace that comes from knowing that God is in charge.
This is really making me think about how I approach challenges in my own life.
Me too. It's a constant process of learning to trust God more and more.
So becoming a storm calmer isn't about becoming some kind of superhero.
It's about becoming more like Jesus.
More compassionate, more loving, more trusting.
Exactly. It's about letting his light shine through us.
So that we can bring peace and hope to the world around us.
That's the ultimate goal.
Well, deep divers, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into Mark chapter 4.
We've explored parables, storms, and the power of faith.
And we've learned that even though we may feel small and insignificant, God can use us to do great things.
He gives us the power to calm the storms in our lives and in the lives of others.
So as we wrap up this episode, I want to leave you with a challenge. Remember those parables, those stories that Jesus used to teach about God's kingdom?
The ones with seeds, the lamp, and the mustard seed.
Well, what if we start looking for parables in our own lives?
What if we see everyday moments as opportunities to learn about God and grow in our faith?
Because maybe, just maybe, those seemingly ordinary moments are actually filled with meaning, just waiting for us to discover them.
And who knows, maybe we'll even find ourselves becoming storm calmers along the way, bringing peace and hope to those around us.
That's a great thought to end on, deep divers. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Gospel of Mark. Until next time, keep exploring, keep seeking, and keep letting your light shine.
Goodbye, everyone.